Welcome back to the channel, Hobby1 Kenobi here. So here we are in the final stages of the Hasegawa Hawker Typhoon build. This video and the next one will feature a process many call oil rendering. I will use this process to achieve weathering over the model. In this video I will start oil rendering on the undersides, and in the next video I will focus on applying oil rendering to the upper surfaces and then finally reveal the completed model. At this point in the video, the model has been painted, it has received a wash, and the model now has a dried final coat of flat. Before oil rendering can begin, I need to add all of the pieces to the model. This includes the wheel struts and wheels, the gear doors, the propeller, the missiles, and forward windscreen. The canopy and small antenna can be left off until later, but I recommend touching the model as little as possible after the oils have been applied. Now, I begin with what some would call oil rendering. Oil rendering is basically the process of bringing subtle variations to an otherwise solid color. This is done, as the name suggests, with artist oils and turpenoid. There are several ways to achieve this effect, and I'm going to narrate the video and try to remember what I was thinking as I was going through this process. This is a process that I have been using for a few years now, and I find it preferable to pre-shading. Pre-shading is a faster process, and for that I understand its appeal. The problem with pre-shading, however, is that once the final coat has been laid down, you get what you get. Oil rendering, on the other hand, allows you to create the exact same effects and more with a lot more control. This process does take a lot longer, and that may be its drawback for some. I will typically start with a very thin brush and apply a thin coat of pure turpenoid to the surface I plan to work on. Next, I will bring a little bit of color to the surface with a very thin brush. The thin brush allows me to have control over the amount of oil paint I bring to the surface. With the same thin brush, I will begin to create dots or other shapes of color. A larger, softer brush with just a hint of turpenoid is used to soften the edges of the shapes. Some shapes can be left with a hard edge, while others will be blended into the surface color. Do remember that the more turpenoid you have loaded up into the brush, the more the oils will move and be lifted. Sometimes I will add some turpenoid in the brush, then remove most of it. The surface may still hold some turpenoid, so even using a perfectly dry brush can reactivate the solvent. On this light gray surface, I like to start with a lighter color first. Pure white works well to get the shape started. You can see as the turpenoid starts to dry from evaporation, what's left is a cloudy effect on the surface. Next, I do the same effect to nearby panels. On this panel, which is just behind the gear well, I decided to go for a more dramatic effect, simulating a buildup of lubricating oils and general grime and dirt. This seems like an appropriate location given that as the plane lifts off, material will gravitate to this area of the wing. Also, on the ground, the crew may frequent this area for general gear maintenance and to install missiles. I just pictured grimy hands all around this area. I blended brown and some white, and will use black and dark gray smudges to start with. The soft brush is then dipped lightly in the turpenoid, and the edges are softened a bit. Over the next few minutes, I continue to build up the colors. Now the panel looks quite dramatic. To bring it back down a bit, I decided to use a splatter effect. Splatter is created by using more solvent than oil. The very thin paint is then flicked onto the surface with the use of a toothpick. White color was used to contrast both the light gray surface and the grimy colors. This is great to create cohesion between all of the colors. It looks now as if the grime has been built up over several weeks. The dots created by the splatter can be left, or the edges can be blended to create a more cloud-like shape. Returning to the wingtip, I now need to add blacks and grime so the entire wing makes sense. Smudges of blacks and grays and splatters of whites are again used. Some edges are softened while others are left sharp. And here the effect is carried to the lower fuselage section. Now I begin to look at seam lines. In some of the seams, too much of the wash was removed. This can be corrected by oil rendering. The panel line shading achieved in pre-shading can also be done with oils. For this, the thin brush is run along the line. The soft turpenoid brush is used to wipe away excess oil. If you like this video, please feel free to give a like and subscribe. The more likes my videos get, the more of an audience we reach, and the more videos I can make. Thank you so much for your support. It's been a blast hearing from some of you in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.